Alright, so this actually released yesterday, but I had no idea about it, so I didn't make a video on it. It's actually in the Korean forms. I usually look more in the Japanese stuff and the global. I should favorite the Korean as well, because favorite wise I only actually have the you can see I only have actually the global one. The JP one I usually get from Twitter because they post at the same time on Twitter. And the Korean, they don't actually use Twitter. They have a Twitter account, but they just haven't posted since like. Actually, I actually want to check. I think they haven't posted since August 22nd of 2020. Yeah, it's been a while. Their last post. They usually come by like this link. Here's the link to the forum. Anyways, they made a post with guidance on future direction of operation. There's this like thing that's been happening on GP in Korea. It's clearly you can tell they slowed down the games. There's barely any content. Every 2 weeks they've been releasing one character when they usually would release two. And they clearly have been slowing down. They've been repeating content non-stop when it comes to PvE. You can clearly tell that they were not trying to advance the game because they want to catch up JP, Global, and Korea all together. You could have known that just by playing the game, but they are addressing this right here in a actual notice in Korea. JP didn't post this, I don't know why, but in Korea. So hi, dear adventurers. Hello. CM Rage is the Korean one. I like CM Rage. It's a cool name. JP doesn't have a CM. The way they make, I don't know, JP is so weird. The way they make their forum posts is that I can actually open. Oh, sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but it's because why is every version different? Like, why didn't they just streamline it? So this is how JP posts their stuff. It's a completely different website. Like it's a completely different website. This is how it's so unorganized too. JP is terrible with this. Korea and Global are so much better organized. They have the thing here. I actually used to prefer the JP one until I realized no, it's much better. And Korea has the def notes actually separate from the notice. It's so much better. Anyways, listen, I like talking. Okay, maybe you've noticed. Today, I would like to give you a detailed guide on the direction of operation of something that seems to be cross service. Korea, Japan, Global, which many adventurers are curious about. Yeah, we've been curious about this since Global release. When they're going to catch up to GP, everything like that. In the case of Global, it was launched with a significant gap between Korea. I wouldn't say significant. I mean, yeah, of course there was a gap, right? But they skipped a lot of content. Didn't skip. They just already were in the game when the game initially came out. Like a few units were already in the game on global launch that actually were not at launch on GP in Korea. But yeah, there was still a gap, of course. I'll say it was like a 5 or a 4 month gap compared to what would have been like a 9. It was like a 6 month gap, something like that. They opened 9 months earlier in March 2020. Yeah, they opened 9 months ago. No. Global has an anniversary already. Okay. Taking into account the differences in the environment of each country and the time of release, Global Services has set up a separate operation plan to coordinate the release schedule of heroes and content. During this process, some costumes were released only in Korea and Japan first, and certain heroes were released first in the globe. They say in plural, like certain heroes, like it wasn't just Hawk and Oz that were in the global market. In addition, as the global service hero and content schedule is different from those Korean and Japanese, there are more and more additional considerations such as seasonal content and reward types. Definitely, there are a lot of activities that JP and Global had that the rewards were slightly different. I think till this day, Super Boss gives less purple gems on Global. It gives 5 while on JP gives 10. Something like that, or is it less Embos? Either way, sometimes Global also gets better rewards than JP as well for the same events. It sometimes differ. Sometimes Global gets better, sometimes Global gets worse. Depends. I guess it depends on what the devs are feeling, honestly. For those different for those contrary to the intention of optimizing the services of each region, Korea, Japan, and the global region, it has become more difficult to operate. I assume it is. It is definitely more difficult to have Korea and Japan are basically the same. Korea has updates 9 hours before JP, so it's basically the same. But global, they definitely have a completely separate team that takes care of deciding what events release when. Because of course, yeah, their job is technically just to translate, but it's not just that. They have to, actually, plan stuff, and they have to, look at feedback, know what to do, stuff like that. It's more than just translating, of course, but it definitely is way simpler if you just have, one team working and everything comes out at the same time. It's much easier. For this reason, we set the global, the Google Translate, Operation Korea, Japan, and global services as equally as possible, and try to change the service operating system. It is true that releases and content updates have been in progress. In this process, the uploaders in order to care for the fast hero release speed in the global service to minimize the gap. Yeah, they even the Korean devs know global been fast as fuck, boy. It was difficult to proceed because the time difference in language differ by country. Really, does that make a difference? Some of these cases have been replaced by other community events in the world, such as Korea, Japan, and others. However, each reward is measured according to the characteristics of each service and region, or a method in which separates rewards for specific. We try to check more carefully so that there is no difference in reward balance as much as possible in the future. As part of that, some items, costumes, are released in the global, but not released in the Korean service. Will be the same. What costumes are you talking about? Oh, there were costumes that Global got for free, that JP had to pay diamonds, but I don't recall any costumes that Global got that JP never did. If there are, let me know, but I don't know of any. And the personal performance is applied differently to some single heroes who also be organized. Yeah. So a lot of times, so there are a few times, right, where Global buffed the unit, like Mon Speed, and GP never got that buff for months. I remember when Mon Speed was released on Global, I believe, he was already buffed. He already had that ultimate that increases the ignites per ultimate level that you have. But on GP, we didn't get that update for months. And I have no idea why, because it is a minimal update. They could have just put in the next one. But other than that, I don't know in many other cases that Global actually got a buff before GP. I know Mono has been buffed on Global at launch, but it still hasn't been buffed on JP, which is weird. In addition, let's talk about Red Mono. As global companies have been running rapidly, reduce the gap, blah, blah, blah. We will try to match the update schedule operation services for as much as possible within a month gap, within May to June. So within May or June, they are predicting that Global, Korea, and JP should be running the same, or at least as much as possible within a month gap. Are you talking about having a month gap between, because right now we're in March. I don't know if they mean like the month gap from now between May and June, or the month gap between June and May and June, or if they mean that Global will have a month gap between Korea and GP. For me, I think, either or, because I think Global, maybe some of y'all may not like, being behind, but Global has a big advantage being behind. Big advantage. It's not even a question. Knowing what comes ahead is a huge advantage between playing JP. If it's a month, it's even better than being 6 months, because then you're waiting too long, right? But if Global has a month delay between Korea and JP, that's such a good thing for Global. But I think they're meaning the month gap between May and June. Not that Global would have a month gap between, Korea and JP. That would be so OP for Global, though. Because just knowing things ahead of time is just so much better. Because right now, if you play JP, you have no idea what's coming next. Global does. Global, you have Valencia Mark II coming out. You have the Festival Merlin coming out, and stuff like that. But for us on JP, we might have, a collab in 2 weeks, or we might have a Holy War Festival in 2 weeks. We have no idea what will be meta in 2 weeks. But y'all do, so it's a huge advantage, especially if you're free to play. Because a lot of times I know it's really difficult to see a character that you want to have and not just summon straight away. Like, maybe, like right now, you know, Assault Melee isn't the greatest of greatest units right now when it comes to PvP. He's really good for sure, but he's in like the most meta. He still gets like stomped by players that, you know how to counter it. But, you know, some player that, you know, is a free-to-play player, has like 60 gems, they're gonna be like, Assault Melee, summon! They might pull him, but they might not, you know, do too well with him, because he just doesn't know how to use him properly, he doesn't have the units to use him with, and there's not much support for him. So just knowing, you know, maybe, oh, next banner, they're gonna release like Festival Zeldris or something, maybe, hopefully, and he's in the banner, I'll summon there instead, you know, I think it's a big difference. It's definitely an advantage from Global. We plan to operate with a compensation structure of the same value as much as possible so that there is no difference. However, depending on the localization system, service agent by country, some events held in the community may have differences in the way are conducted, so we ask for your understanding. In addition, we will try to operate our ears to the inconvenience in areas that need improvements. Okay, it's interesting, in the Korean translation, they say adventurers, but I believe both in JP and Global they say knights. Not that it matters. Okay, they're asking for, you know, feedback, I guess. We plan to receive opinions through servers in March. Okay. So, that is interesting. Very interesting. So, the way that they said it, right? I'm actually hoping for Global that y'all have the month behind, because I think it's such an advantage, knowing what comes a month ahead of time. Maybe, you know, some of y'all prefer having the unit straight away, you know, seeing me and other, you know, YouTubers play with a unit ahead of time may make you like too excited to have it, you know, and you can't have it because you play Global. Then you have to wait a month in this case, you have to wait a month for it. But trust me, especially if you're free to play, just knowing ahead of time is just such a big advantage. And honestly, it's bad for them, because having people know where to summon on is bad for them. They want people to, you know, summon as much as possible, so they, you know, make as much revenue as possible, buy as many gems as they have to, and stuff like that. But, you know, if you know ahead of time, you don't summon here because it's better to summon there. So I don't know. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're excited for, you know, Global catching up to JP, or if you liked, you know, being a few months behind, you know, and knowing all these banners that are coming out and stuff like that. Let me know.